Okay.
So welcome everyone to our latest edition of the Think Like an Explorer video blog. Now, we had hoped that we were going to have a guest with us today, Mark Williams from the Buxton Mountain Rescue Team. But he lives in the mountains, and the mountains are doing mountainous things like dumping huge amounts of snow on England, where you don't need it, when we could have it in the Pyrenees, where we could have gone skiing with it. So that's a bit of a shame. But Mark can't get a stable enough connection to talk to us on Blab. Technology falls in the face of mountain storms. So we're going to have to put that one off for another time, but we will try and do that again in the future because I think it's a very interesting topic. So what we're going to do this afternoon is simply talk about rescue. As mountaineers who go out there doing things that are risky, sometimes in environments where we know we can call in a rescue, and sometimes in places where the team has to be completely self-sufficient. I think it's interesting to talk about how we think about rescue, why we think it's okay to expect someone else to sally out to rescue us potentially, and how we prepare for that kind of eventuality. Now, I live in a country where mountain rescue is formalized. In our case, I live in Andorra. Mountain rescue is the responsibility of the fire service. And they're frankly much more likely to be going out in the mountains than they are to actually be confronting any kind of real fire. And they are trained for this. We also have insurance, so that if we have to get rescued, we have insurance that can pay the costs for that. But the system in England is very different. So Nigel, do you want to explain to us how it works in the UK?
Yes, thanks, Cathy. Well, basically, it's completely voluntary over here. The mountain rescue teams have been set up predominantly since the Second War, mainly in the 1960s. And they are a voluntary force. They are people that raise their own funds, give their own time, get all training organised, and they will come out in their own volition and setup. There's some government funding, but to be honest, it's very, very small compared to the actual costs of running mountain rescue. But you don't just ring mountain rescue here. You obviously ring the fire service in Andorra, Cathy. Over in the UK, you ring the police. And then you would ask for mountain rescue, and then the police would obviously call the appropriate team to come out and render assistance in their time.
Well, one of the things that interests me about that particular model, the whole idea for this blab was kicked off by a rash of people who went missing on and around Ben Nevis in some very bad weather towards the end of last month. And there was the standard set of sort of hysterical Daily Mail stuff about, you know, poor brave rescuers putting their lives at risk thanks to utterly selfish mountain people, you know, who should have known better than to go out into a mountain in winter. How dare they? And then, of course, a lot of mountain guys responded, and there was a Twitter kerfuffle over this that was quite amusing. There's a very good article by Cameron McNeish, actually, justifying why it's good for us to be out in the mountains. But coming back to the whole question about sort of selfish mountaineers putting mountain rescue at risk, you've just told me that these guys are volunteering for this.
Yeah.
They actually put their hand up and go, I know what I want to spend my spare time doing or be on call to do, is to go and take risks in the mountains to find people who've got into trouble. So obviously that's not what people assume. Why do people sign up to do this?
You could ask the same in this country, certainly in Britain, about lifeboats. The RNLI, they're all volunteers as well, and they come out in some horrendous seas to go and help people. I think it's just, with a lot of people, it's a love of the environment that they're in, Cathy, and also a lot of them are people that work in caring professions or the outdoor professions, from everything from a farmer who's alive land to people who work in health services and are experts in medical care. And they choose, as you say, as a free pastime almost, to be trained, spend lots of time fundraising, organising, meeting, getting things done, to come out in usually pretty awful conditions, to give their time and risk their own lives sometimes to come and help others. And I think it's been a very, very big world in Britain to do lots of things voluntary for many, many years, from the Wings Institute to, giving your time at a local charity shop. It's what we do, or we have done a lot in this country for many, many years. And a lot of the teams that do this for voluntary, if you ask them, they will tell you, please do not let it go under central control. We are much better run and organised as volunteers than we would ever be if it was ran by the government or the council or anybody else. They're much happier to be independent of them.
Well, what's interesting to me about that is it basically, okay, based on my sort of personal experience of knowing people who do mountain rescue, yes, it's all for the social good, potentially, but they enjoy it.
Oh, yeah.
It's basically, let's talk about that. It's fun. Yeah. There's a certain drama to it. There's adrenaline to it. And you're doing something useful. You might even be saving a life. But most people sign up for mountain rescue because they actually enjoy the challenge of being out there in terrible conditions, out in the wilderness, seeing whether they can pull this thing off. Oh, yeah. And I think that's completely missed in the discussion about selfish climbers being rescued by selfless mountain rescue people. And, oh, my God, how can you put them in this level of danger? There's a reason they volunteered to be part of mountain rescue.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've been to more balls and parties into mountain rescue than anything. There is a huge social scene, let's be honest. You go training, you do medical training, witch training, rescue training, and then there's the social side. You go to the pub, have a chat, have a party, have a ball, have a fundraiser. When you're out on the hill, you're a very close bonded team. And it's been mentioned many, many times in research, Cathy, about people having lives where there isn't any excitement or there isn't any adventure. And perhaps people find mountain rescue and many other things like this, it gives them a side of life where, though you can plan, though you can organise, though you can be as ready to go as you like, when that pager goes off, you don't know what's coming. And it could be, the old thing, anytime, any place, anywhere from the 70s. It's a rescue. I know guys from the Buxton team who have pulled motorcyclists out of trees, rescue drivers who have abandoned vehicles. It can purely be the ambulance services, the medical services are there, and they just can't get to the casualty. So we need mountain rescue to sail in, get stretchers down, get the crews in. It can be a real mixed bag, and I think people really do, as you say, thoroughly enjoy that.
Yes, I think so. The bottom line is that we're all of us, both the rescued and the rescuers, enjoy a certain level of risk in our lives.
Oh, yeah.
And yes, that's part of the enjoyment that we get out of it. So I think the next important thing is kind of, as got expressed in some of the Twitter storm around this, there but for the grace of God go I, which is kind of around the rescue ethic or just the help ethic in the mountains. And despite some of the drama about, it's normally Everest and stories about people stepping over dead bodies and this kind of thing, the truth is that the ethic in the outdoors is to give what help you can without getting your own people killed in the process. Yeah. And there's an acceptance that bad luck happens. And yes, we can say that most accidents, you can track them back to human error. It's not all that often, literally a lightning bolt out of a clear blue sky. And you can say that there's no way you could have imagined that happening. But you can also say that it's almost impossible for us to live lives where we make no mistakes. We're human. It just doesn't work like that. Most of the time we make mistakes and think, oh, thank God I got away with that.
Well, yes. Yeah. And we learn by them, Cathy. It's one of the greatest ways of learning. When I'm working with youngsters in education, so 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds, one of the greatest ways they learn is by getting things wrong and realising it doesn't have to be a mountaineering disaster. You got your shoes on backwards. Did it hurt? Yes. Well, you'll not do it again, will you? You learn by these things. And I was only in funny enough, in Scotland, 8 or 9 days ago. And you talk about giving assistance on the mountain. There were people there. I was getting my crampons and my kit on just to do a fairly simple snow gully, really. And 2 guys walked up with absolutely no idea where they were, no map, no kit, but really eager. I mean, really eager. But it was, well, we'd like to do this, this and this. I couldn't let them do it because I know they wouldn't be safe. So you guide them to somewhere that is, and they have a lovely day, and they all go home, and everybody's happy. The top of the Cairngorm Plateau, if you know it, can be a beautiful place, and it can be vile. And so what a lot of us will do is all club together as a group, and we'll all come off together, and we'll all help each other. And when you get to the car park, you say, thank you very much, and have a great day. Because we are the Mountain Collective, or whatever you want to call it. We mug in, we help, because that's what we do.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And that kind of mountain rescue is then the professional end of that, because sometimes you're in a situation where the people on the ground just don't have enough equipment, they don't have enough manpower, or the injuries are too severe to be able to say we can sort it out among ourselves. And at that point, you're going to try and get in some kind of professional help. Yeah. And mountain rescue people on the whole think, yeah, that's fair enough. When I'm out there in my free time, I'm glad that there's a professional at the end of the phone, hopefully. And when I contribute to that professionally, it's part of the give and take of, as you called it, the Mountain Collective.
Yeah.
But that's...
Go on, sir.
I was going to say that, of course, what it doesn't do, though, is absolve us from responsibility of doing our best not to be making careless mistakes. And I think it's sort of, people overlook sometimes the level of responsibility that we carry individually to try not to get into trouble. And yes, it's a grey line, because you can say, if we hadn't gone out there at all, we wouldn't have got into trouble. Yeah. So there's no arguing with that. We are choosing to take risks because we believe the reward it brings into our lives, physically and mentally and spiritually, is worth it. Yeah. We live better, healthier, more enriched lives for taking a level of risk. Yeah. But we also go out there trying to minimize the risk. And very interestingly, there's an article, I'll tweet the link afterwards, because I still have the beach ball of death on my Mac right now. We've just had the first winter ascent of Nanga Parbat.
Yes.
So this is one of the last two 8,000 meter peaks that hadn't been climbed in winter. It's been tried numerous times. I think we had 5 teams trying this season, and it got done about 3 or 4 days ago.
Yeah.
4 people headed for the top. 3 made it, and 1 turned back about 150 meters short of the summit. Tamaralunga. And she turned back because she figured that she could get to the top, but she didn't think she was going to be able to get to the top and get herself back down safely. Yeah. And on Nanga Parbat, there is no rescue. Certainly not Nanga Parbat in winter at that altitude. Yeah. The only rescue was her 3 teammates. Yeah. And she was potentially going to kill both herself and them if she didn't turn back. I mean, it was a huge ask. No woman has been on, a first ascent of a 8,000 meter route in winter. So Tamara was very close to doing something world record breaking that would have done, great things for her professional career as a climber. And she didn't. And she left the other 3 to go on and, claim that world first, one of the most important ascents of 2016. And I think that's what sort of self-care responsibility in the mountains looks like.
It does, because actually the press will have their, she didn't make it. My view would be she took absolutely the right decision. If she was in a position, she said, if I go up there and I'll not get down, it's a tough call. I've made it a couple of times myself, nothing as big as Nanga Parbat, but I've had a couple of calls 100, 150 metres from the top and just gone, if I get up there, it's going to be such a fight and such a battle and so long, I'm coming down way after dark. No, this is not my day. This is time to go home. And it's the right call. It really is the right call. It's the responsible call and a very professional call. I think it shows a very professional side of mountaineering. Thankfully, not sometimes what you see, as you say, the mainstream tabloid press will have, because they all seem to just want to report disaster and horror. And as you say, we're all irresponsible. Or, just on that, this case on the Ben, Cathy, unfortunately, as we go to press now, I don't think they've even found or recovered any of the bodies yet. Mountain Rescue are actually asking people on the Ben please record in every route you climb and tell us the conditions so that we can obviously narrow the search. But even the BBC rang me last week and asked, what do you think? Where are you? I said, I'm in Scotland. Oh, well, some Derbyshire climbers have died in Scotland. Do you think we're all setting a trend of people dying? And because I wouldn't give them a sensationalist reply, and the guy on the other end of the phone was just, oh, right, okay, yeah, oh, right. Because I think they just expected, oh, yes, I think it's really dangerous and we should all... But they didn't, because we are mainly a responsible bunch of folk. We're a damn sight more responsible than an awful lot of people.
Yes, I mean, we're prepared to send the ambulance crews out to pick up accidents caused by drunk drivers and people texting and all these kinds of things. It's interesting how certain kinds of risks get labeled as selfish and other kinds of risks are just completely accepted because we need our cars so badly that we're not prepared to talk about risks involved with driving, let alone driving that in some sense is impaired.
Yeah. I mean, the most dangerous place, if you look at the, in Britain, ROSPA, the Royal Society for the Prevention of Accidents, all their website statistics point to the most dangerous place in the world being your kitchen. It's full of hot and sharp things. Very little about mountaineering. Most things are road accidents, gardens and kitchens. The best thing to do is not have any of them, and you'll live perfectly safely. But joking apart, when I was in the Gorms last week, in the Cairngorms, I always go and talk to the mountain rangers, say hello, how are things, what's the conditions on the mountain like, because they provide a free service. They provide avalanche information, weather information, and also what other people have seen and done and climbed and what conditions are like. So why wouldn't you use it? It's there for free. And they have more ambulances coming to take people off the hill because they've been hurt sledging than they will ever have through mountaineering.
But I think it's also another interesting aspect to talk about because, and then this is one that's kind of more difficult. So again, in those terribly bad conditions in Scotland, eventually the mountain rescue pulled off the mountain without having found the missing climbers. And at that point, you've got to say the missing climbers are dead, or if they aren't dead yet, they're going to die. Once you can't leave them out in those conditions. But of course, we had no idea where they were. As you said, we still haven't found them. We've got no idea where they are. Probably deeply buried under an avalanche, I guess would be the best guess. But there's this uncomfortable point that the ethic when you get trained in any kind of mountain rescue or any kind of mountain medicine is your own life first, the life of the rescue team second, the life of the victim last. Yeah. And that doesn't sell terribly well as a media headline either, because that just sounded profoundly selfish. But that's the reality of rescue. You do what you can, but you're also trying terribly hard not to get any more people injured and let alone killed.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that we've got to live in a realistic situation here. If I was stuck out on a mountain and I could get to contact or make contact, that's one thing. If you're called out to go and rescue anybody in any situation, I mean, we've had a terrible accident in Britain in the last few days where a power station was being demolished and it's collapsed.
Yeah. It was,
and they very seriously suspect there's 3 bodies still in there. You've got to be honest and say, we can't shift 500,000 tons of concrete overnight. It's not going to happen. And if you've been in the mountains too long and the rescuers are starting to be avalanched, I think, if I'm right, 2 of the rescuers were nearly caught in avalanche as well. The search and rescue dog teams can't find anybody, and with days in, it's an awful call, but you have to take it. There is nothing you can do but not cause any more casualties. It's a classic thing. If anybody does a first aid course, one of the most classic things about first aid is assess the situation. Do you have a casualty, yes or no? And are you going to become another casualty by getting to them? And it's a horrible call to make. But I don't think you have a choice.
Yes, it's a horrible call to make, and it's not only one that's made by Mountain Rescue. I mean, we talk about, the Mountain Collective and helping each other, because we certainly, some of us, both you and I, go to places where there is effectively no mountain rescue. And actually, even in Britain, if the weather is truly bad, they're not going to be able to get to you. So
No.
even somewhere where mostly you know you can call in a rescue, you have to have some idea of how you're going to get yourself out or what you're going to try and do. If conditions are so bad, a helicopter can't fly, or you can't get a mobile phone signal, or whatever it is. So then we're stuck with the problem about helping each other. But we're in the same dilemma. Yeah. How much help do you give to strangers in trouble in the mountains, or even to your team members in trouble in the mountains, while trying not to turn yourself into another casualty, or get yourself killed?
This is it. I mean, the problem you've got is, what situation are these people in? Just as an example, there's a very, very classic area in the Cairngorms called Corrian Trecht or Corrian Snecta, depending on how you pronounce your Gaelic. And some of the simple routes are very simple to climb, but they are notorious for huge overhanging cornices. Mm-hmm. You can see them from the bottom if you know what you're looking for, but if conditions are bad, I've known people get up them and they're 20 feet from the top, and there is a 15-foot overhanging cornice, and where do they go? I've been with people who have lowered ropes to them before and just said, look, we can get a rope down to you, but the problem is, do you really want to take this cornice on? Because if this thing collapses, there's a lot of weight up there and you are not fixed onto a great deal. But then they've got to have the confidence to down climb. And sometimes it might be we can put a long rope on you and assist you at least to get down to a safer area and you can walk out. I don't think I could leave anybody on the mountain unless there was absolutely nothing I could do, which would be called a mountain rescue, because they might not be in a position to do it. There's plenty of routes, no service, but if you're on the top, if your mobile's there, it might be. But I would do absolutely everything in my power to assist them, plus a professional help if that was needed, which is what we do.
Yes, but I think the point is everything in your power does not necessarily save people's lives.
No.
It's sorry, I'm not sure we wanted my cat's backside on the internet, but yeah, whatever. Everything in your power, I'll call mountain rescue. That's fine when you can.
When you can, absolutely, Cathy.
We have also been in places where you can't. And everything in your power may still not be enough to save lives. And eventually you may have to make a choice as to when do you try and save your own life. This I've been in this situation, and it's real. And there is no magic solution. No. There is no way of waving a wand and making the situation okay. Yeah. Managing to save yourselves and save the person who you're trying to help. Yeah. And we hope not to be in that position. But it is the far end of the spectrum of risk we take and therefore situations that we may face.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully, most situations of people needing assistance in the mountains, in my experience, are people who are just genuinely lost. Whiteout conditions come down, they're not prepared for it, but that can be dealt with. That's another great issue. We can navigate people down safely. When we get into the more extreme positions of technical climbing, high altitude climbing, the numbers are very small compared to the tens of thousands of people that go out onto the hills every weekend. But as you say, this is a tough call to make. I've never had to make it in that way. But even if it was, guys, I know you're stuck, certainly in Britain it's not so bad. You could at least get to a telephone and make the call, and it might take 5 or 6 hours. When I talk to the rangers in some of the mountain areas, and even if you record in where you're going, because there's been a lot of discussion about this, should we record where we're going, what we're doing, so that people have got a rough idea where to look? Even they say, if your car's still here overnight, we're not going to come out tomorrow. We don't just turn up Mountain Rescue at 6 p.m. and go, right, we've got 8 cars in the car park, we'd better do something about it. It will be the next day, and you're going to have to spend a night out there, which is very unpleasant in some parts of the world, as you'll know well. Most of Scotland, the laybys, people are instructed, do not leave cars in overnight because we will fear somebody stuck on the hill. Glencoe's a classic for this. They don't want anybody overnight camping or leaving cars for the fear of, where are they? But, you can take the other side of it, is that paranoia. does that stop people going into the mountains and doing adventurous things?
Yes, I'd hate to have to log in a route to go into the mountains. I mean, part of the joy of mountains is getting up onto a ridge and looking around and going, let's go that way.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
Let's just go exploring and see what we discover. Yes, it's hard. I mean, there's no doubt that if we all had to carry satellite trackers at all times and register exactly where we're going in advance, yeah, it would be easier to find people. But it would just we'd lose all the joy of what we do.
It brings a sterility to it, doesn't it?
Mm.
There's no impetuous sort of, I don't like that route anymore. Let's go there and see what there is. Yeah, all that's gone. And as you say, that is one of the great joys of being in the outdoors. There's nothing that I enjoy more than going out to, what I'm going to do today, I have no idea. Let's just go and have a look.
Yeah, I'd rather be allowed to take the risk and then live with the consequences. And, if it ends up in something where the rescue can't get to me, I'll live with that. It's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely, Cathy. Absolutely. But getting back to mountain rescue in the UK, because it has been addressed quite a lot just lately. I think, as I say, it's the age-old issue that the tabloids grab hold of this. And I've just put a link up actually from The Guardian about people, not The Guardian's a tabloid at all, but about, the ongoing search and things going on. We stick together in the mountains. Even when people are lost, we will stick together, and people will do everything to try and find people, to recover things, to make the situation, I can't say better because it's not great, but everybody tends to stick together. One thing I've heard from a great deal of the mountaineering people, everybody out there, is the sort of camaraderie in situations like this where everybody mucks in. If a mountain rescue team just said, we need 50 volunteers, is anybody available? They would snap their hands off to go and help, even if it was a line search. When I was airlifted off McKinley, my friend Steve, who'd taken a big fall, they went round a camp. They asked if 3 Englishmen were in there because they were making sure we weren't there. Will anybody assist? And loads of folk came out and just said, that's fine. Where do you want us? How can we help you?
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap it up. So effectively, we're deeply appreciative of being allowed to go out there and take risk. We never want to lose that. But also very appreciative of the people who put their hands up to work as mountain rescue professionals.
Yeah, very much so, Cathy.
Excellent. Well, thank you both for another good blab. And hopefully sometime in the future, we'll be able to bring Mark in and actually talk to someone who's on the cutting edge of receiving the call, the unexpected call, and having to get out there and try and make that rescue work.
Yeah, super.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cathy. Thanks, Eddie.
Thanks.